In 4 episodes, we've begun to explore the heart of the Arab classroom, literacy and citizenship education. In this episode, we explore a systems change initiative in Lebanon that for 10 years has supported both Arabic literacy and the social emotional skills required to build good citizenship. Join us as we explore what Kitabi is in the classroom, in the national education system, and in the international development sector, and how it's changing schooling in Lebanon.
Welcome to another episode of our special series entitled Inside the Arab Classroom. My name is Mikey Mhenna. This series is a collaboration between New York University's Global Ties for Children and Afikra. Global Ties for Children is an international research center based in New York University, focused on supporting education and child development research in low and middle income and crisis-affected contexts. Our guest today is Dr. Wafa Kotob, who has been working in the field of education since 1987. She's worked as a school teacher, a school counselor, a teacher trainer, and researcher in the field of education. In 2007, she received her PhD from the University of Manchester in the UK and has been working in the field of development as the policy and planning specialist in the World Bank, in the Ministry of Education in Lebanon, and later at UNICEF. Today, we're talking about her work as chief of party for the USAID-funded Quality Instruction Towards Access to Basic Education Improvement 2. And because that name is so long, most people call it Kitabi 2, which is the subject of today's conversation. Wafa, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope this will be an interesting discussion.
Yeah. I want to talk about development and development's role in education and how that role changes the quality of education that students receive on the ground. But before we get to it, what does that word mean in this context, development?
Development really is about enhancing the quality of educational services for students. It's that's the big title. Whatever, better classroom teaching, better resources, better assessment, a better response to student needs, all should lead to improvement in student learning, or learning outcomes, as we call them in the literature. So development needs to be defined from an ecosystem approach, really. It's not just about the classroom, and the teacher. It's about not just the school, it's also the parents, the community, the culture, the policies. And of course, development is highly governed by politics. And I don't mean politics in the local sense. I mean, the politics in general, the general meaning of politics.
Yeah. But when I hear the phrase international development, for me that conjures images of just fundraising.
Mm.
Is that what that is?
No, definitely not.
Walk me through it.
Yeah. Okay. The big donor communities, even the small philanthropic and international NGOs, they all start by, defining their vision for how they want to support, whom they want to support, and what do they want to get to? What are the outcomes? Every international donor, and every donor agency or, at development agencies like USAID, the what used to be called the DFID, now it's called something else. If you want the philanthropic development NGOs, all of these start by defining what is it that they want to achieve, and from there they define their goals, and from their goals then they start to allocate funding based in countries that needs this kind of support. After that, the donor approaches the country and says, this is what I want to do with you. This is what I'm ready to support you at. Then the country is supposed to look at its strategic plan for development, whether it's in education, agriculture, whatever, and see if there's alignment. Now, what happened? And then they go and say, okay, USAID, we also want to work on literacy in in our, mother tongue. Let's put a plan together. How are we going to achieve it? Let's work together. And this is in the ideal world. However, developing countries don't always have strategies for development. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get at what that looks like in the context of Kitabi. So the whole point of this series is to understand the factors that are shaping educational outcomes for students in the Arab world and what those outcomes are. Like, that's the whole vision of this series, is to try to understand what are kids learning, why are they learning them, what are the factors that are shaping those learnings, and where we are, maybe where we might be going. So Kitabi is a good example of one of those factors. So tell us, what is this program?
Yeah. Kitabi really is a three component. First of all, it is a consortium of 5 partners led by Word Learning. Then we have IRC as a partner, MSI, and 2 local NGOs called ALLC and afikra. The consortium works together in order to implement. However, Kitabi is a USAID-funded project that with identified outcomes. Outcome number 1 is to enhance primary grade students' learning or learning outcomes in Arabic, second language, and math.
Can I, just for people who are listening to this only exists in Lebanon?
Kitabi, yes, in Lebanon.
Okay, so when you're talking about these agencies, you're talking about their Lebanese counterparts that are focused specifically on grades 1 through 6 across all regions in Lebanon. 800.
The government, there are
exclusively public schools.
Exclusively public schools. There are around 879 public schools, 880 public schools, primary public schools, and Kitabi works with all of them. The second outcome is to enhance student social and emotional learning. We all know that, especially now, the discussion in the academia we all know that without social skills and emotional skills, academic learning doesn't really happen. USAID was very wise to give a whole outcome or to identify an explicit outcome for social and emotional learning to show the importance of this. However, now when we work in the classroom, it's integrated in everything we do. And I can explain later more if you like. So social and emotional learning is part of every math classroom, is part of every teacher training, is part of our discourse, it's part of our resource development. However, it's written on paper as a separate outcome.
I'm really curious about how, because these are projects that you apply for funding for, and typically you have to show results. How do you actually show these results in ways that are not cynical and in a ways that are meaningful?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's the $1 million question. That's the $1 million question.
That's the often hundreds of $1 million question.
Yeah, this is the $1 million. To be honest, I don't think there is teaching or learning without social and emotional learning. They were always part of every lesson we've done from. If you go back to your school days, you will remember that there were some teachers who taught us something similar, but however, it wasn't explicit, it wasn't structured, and it wasn't monitored. I'm sure you remember some teachers used to take the time and some teachers didn't. Now what we're saying, it has to be explicit, it has to be structured, and we're giving you the tools to do it. What we did is that in Kitabi, the previous one, Kitabi 1, if you want, we worked with NYU and with Harvard University School of Education in order to identify, and of course with local partners, the Ministry of Education, with the Center for Educational Development and Research, and we identified a range or a framework of skills or competencies that we in Lebanon think are of top priorities. These are, I'm not going to bore you and list all of them, but some of them are empathy, That includes listening skills, for example. Another one is, as I was saying, self-awareness, self-regulation, working memory, and all. There is a whole range, executive function. There's a whole range of skills. And of course, we have experts who know the details and the details. After identifying these skills, we have been developing tools to measure the child's skills. I can't say that. I think we've advanced a lot, and now we are piloting the first set of tools. We will be, using them in June in order to train a group of teachers. We're piloting to use these tools in order to identify students' social and emotional skills, not the whole range, but we're starting with 3 constructs. The most prioritized ones for us, like cognitive flexibility, and as I was saying, working memory, and the most important ones for us now. So yes, there are tools. What I want to say, yes, there are tools, and yes, we are using them, and we are developing them, and we will measure them. And maybe if next year, this time, I will be able to answer you more clear, to give you results. But in the meantime, we can't wait until the tools are developed to measure. So hopefully next year, this time, I will be able to have a call with you and say, look, these classes where teachers attended the training, students' cognitive flexibility has improved from in a range of whatever, and the same with other ones. So yes, there are measurements.
So I want to talk. Yeah, of course. No, I want to talk a little bit about Arabic language learning and the work that you guys are doing in that space as well. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me just a little bit of what that part of the program looks like?
Yes. Arabic learning is the trademark of Kitabi, hence the word Kitabi. Mm-hmm. Kitabi started in 2014. So next year will be the 10th year of working with the ministry on enhancing literacy in Arabic. What we did is we worked with local NGOs and with international partners in order to use what we call the balanced literacy approach that is very well researched in Columbia University. Then it was contextualized to Lebanon and to the Arabic language. And the balanced literacy approach says that we need 5 aspects of reading. I'm not going to go into the details: phonetics, phonemes, and comprehension, fluency, and so on, and vocabulary and sight words and so on. So we translated that, or we contextualized it to Lebanon, worked with the ministry and the Center of Educational Research in order to integrate it as a training resource for teachers. And we have been training all Arabic language teachers in public schools, both grades 1 to 6, on how to implement the balanced literacy approach. How does it look like in the classroom? The teacher steps into the classroom in the morning, has the circle time, that social and emotional learning. It depends what's the topic of the day. Then she introduces a concept or a learning concept. And then she works with the students as a group in order to implement. And then they work in pairs and then maybe individually. She gradually releases the responsibility of learning from the teacher to the child. And the classroom has a library of 50 books, minimum of 50 books that are leveled. So the teacher starts at the beginning of the year by assessing her students to find out what level of reading they are at. What she does is that, as I was saying, she introduced, let's say she's saying, today we are learning about main characters in a story. She reads a book aloud, and then she demonstrates how he identified the main character. Who is the main character? maybe it's the person that we hear most about. Do you think so? She demonstrates, we call it metacognitive. She explains how she's thinking to the child. She models it. And then she says, now I want you to go and pick your book. And of course, she directs them to which level. Read your books either alone or with a group and try to find out who's the main character and come back. Now, the first time a child will read maybe 10 words from the book, the second time, 20 words, 30 words. By the end of the year, the child should improve at least one reading level. Some kids go 2 to 3 levels.
So let me ask you a question.
Mm.
If I thought about a classroom in Zahlia in 1960 with a group of 8-year-olds, how different would it have been? Like, help me understand the contrast.
Yeah. Don't go back to 1960. Let's go to 1990 when I was still in the school. Teachers would step into the classroom, and I was in a very, very good school. Arabic teachers would step in the classroom and say, open your books. We are on lesson 2. Lesson 2 is about, if she's a very good teacher, she would write the title of the lesson on the board. And then she would maybe write a few new words from the lesson and try to read them with the students in order to help them to understand, so that when they face these words in the text, they know, they have an idea. And then she would say, Ahmed, read the first 2 lines. Joseph, read the second 2 lines, and so on and so forth. And the students would listen to each other. And then at the end of the lesson, if she's a really good teacher, she would do some kind of assessment in order to see who understood and who didn't understand the lesson.
Yeah.
Today, it's a totally different approach.
But if we go back even further, let's say we go back to the 1960s, was your teacher, this hypothetical teacher you're describing in the 90s, were they considered revolutionary and cutting edge? Oh my God, they're asking students to read. Was that considered cutting edge at the time? Or was the practice in the 1990s basically how it had been done for hundreds of years?
Yeah, with a little bit of improvements here and there. Like introducing the vocabulary before we start. In the 1960s, the teacher would just step in and say, open your books, read. Read 2 lines, and maybe they will have a ruler in their hand and they would smack the child every time they make a mistake. Or even worse, to have kids sitting at the back, people who don't read, they will never ask them to read because they don't read. Yeah.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking is because what you're describing is drastically different, significantly different. And on paper, one would say, wow, it's almost revolutionary. This is so significant in terms of approach and input and dedication and resources and commitment to engagement and tailored approach and all this cognitive work. The results must also be significantly and drastically different. Oh my God, we must have an army of metacognitive aware students walking around.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. That's why.
What's the difference?
Difference is that we need time and changes being implemented. And if you come to Lebanon, I am ready to take you to a couple of public schools in the most marginalized area. And you can see teachers actually implementing. Change of minds and change of hearts is not an easy thing. And we started with the ministry, the officials. It took us all of Kitabi the first 5 years to get them on board.
Wait, are you telling me? Yeah. With the ministries and officials, did you also say, who do you think the main character is?
We did demonstrate that. And by the way, they didn't like it. But yes, we did.
No, they need the metacognition.
Yeah, they need the metacognition. But to be honest, there are really a lot of hidden gems in the public sector. And we have heroes who have engaged with us, to be fair, and they have helped us to make it happen. But really, I can show you testimonials. I'm not saying we've changed the situation in in Lebanon in reading Arabic, but I can say we have 10 years of experience and we have great success stories that I am ready to share. The problem with the public sector is that they're very bad at marketing themselves. There are lots of private schools that are even worse.
Yeah. So tell me some of these success stories. Help me understand it.
Yeah, there are
yeah.
teachers who actually come and say, "We have changed. I have changed as a person," but it takes a long time. You do know that for a teacher to change behavior in the classroom, the teacher needs least at least 50 hours of training. The level of commitment differs from teacher to teacher, but I can say with all confidence that if you have a school that's committed, a principal that's committed, and a teacher that's committed, I am sure that their classroom can be a demonstration of the idea that I have been that I was trying to describe.
So in terms of the students that they serve, let's say Kitabi 2 finishes, Kitabi 3 gets funded, and there's another 10 years down the line. What are things that you'll pay attention to guide the course of the program?
We look at student learning. What we do is we go to the 880 schools. We have what we call learning facilitators who visit these schools. And we assess, we implement a baseline. We support the teachers to collect, baseline meaning assessments. I don't want to call them tests, but assessments for each grade level. Grade 2, for example, we go to the teacher in grade 2 and ask her to give us or to take about 10 to 15 minutes or sometimes half an hour to assess her students in basic reading skills. Then, we gather that data, we analyze it, and we have a baseline. And then at the end of the year, we do the assessment again. Last year, because the schools were closed all year, they opened in February. And so we did the baseline in February. And then we did the end line that was in June, because the schools closed in June. The amount of teaching was around 6 weeks, maximum of 6 weeks.
Yeah,
and it was crazy, of course. And we could actually see improvement in the students' learning on the same tool. This year, we did the baseline at the beginning of the year, we analyzed that data in all 800 schools in the 4 subjects. And now we are in the phase of collecting the end line. And then we will see where have the improvements happened. So the schools where there has been improvement, we go and encourage and so on. But the focus next year would be on the schools that there is not much improvement. We go back and we see what's happening. Is it about leadership? Do they have not been trained? Do we need to coach them more? And we work with the ministry either to repeat the trainings, or sometimes we ask the DG to reprimand the principals if possible, or to encourage the ones that have been doing that.
So let's say organizations like USAID and all these INGOs, they look at your success and they say, "Taiba'al, this is easy. We figured it out. Clearly, we figured it out. A grade level in 12 weeks. Amazing, right?" Is this a copy-paste thing where they can say, "Amazing, well, let's do this in Tunis, and let's do this in Sudan, and let's do this in Iraq, and let's do this in Syria, and let's do this in Egypt"? And no, this is a copy-paste.
Doesn't work.
No, we figured this out.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Okay, why?
Like that.
Explain it to me.
Because human beings, I always say, we are dealing with human beings. The technical, I always say, technical is the easiest bit. It is winning the hearts and minds of people. In order for them to go through this very painful process of conceptual change, you are changing. Like you have a concept of what does teaching and learning mean in your head that you need to change and transform. What does it look like in the classroom? This is a huge thing, a huge change, and it's very painful. So every country has its context. We can share lessons learned, but they have to go through the process. They have to go through working what works with them. They have to see what to adapt from our model. They have to pilot it like we did in Kitabi in 260 schools, learn from it, and then roll it out like we are doing in Kitabi too, and say, okay, it worked. Let's see what with tweaking after piloting.
Okay, I want to talk about some of the resistance. I was a teacher too, right? And teachers hate these external partners coming and telling them what to do. right?
Yeah.
And especially when it's like some foreigner, right?
Yeah.
Into it. You're not a foreigner, but the organizations that you're partnering with are foreign, right? So and it could be, you could, if you're a particularly cynical, burnt out teacher, of which there are many,
Yes.
you could say very easily, and no, this is a curriculum, this is a style of teaching that's not local, that's
Exactly.
not indigenous. This is a foreigner, هيك أجنبي way of doing things.
يقولوا لنا شو بدنا نعمل. They're here to tell us what to do. What do they know? What do they know? What do they know?
So how do you manage this challenge, and how do you actually listen to this natural reaction?
First of all, we accept it. We all know that we are going to be faced with resistance. It's normal. It's normal. We were teachers, and we know. Not only that, I used to be a teacher. I attend a workshop and say, wow, what amazing ideas. Go back to the classroom. I would never implement any of it. So even if you accept it, it's hard to implement. As I was saying, change of behavior is very hard. So first of all, we start knowing that there is resistance to change. It's not like we're. Secondly, as I was saying, we work through the system. They don't see any foreigners. There's nothing foreign about Kitabi, to be honest. There is an international approach that we contextualize to Lebanon with Lebanese people and Lebanese experts. We made it fit to ours because research shows that it works. And it does work because students get engaged and we see that it works. And then we work with the ministry people. And that's another, there's this layer of resistance to start with. Once we have them on board, the ministry works with their teachers, with their trainers, who also we go through a resistance of change and so on. And then the teachers. To be honest, this is a human nature. It's there. The only way to deal with it is to keep engaging, to listen to their concerns, to try to answer, because you don't always have to have the right answers. But most importantly is to show them that it works. Every teacher, even the least committed, they want their students to learn. I'm sure. Every teacher. Now, maybe they don't know how, maybe they use the wrong approach, but every teacher, once the teacher is convinced that it works, he or she will be ready to invest the huge time and effort that's needed. That's why I say it needs time. That's why I say 5 years and 5 years and another 5 years. There are no quick fixes in education.
Okay, so in 2007, when you finished your PhD, what did you fundamentally misunderstand about education in the Arab world and the challenges that you have worked on since then?
In 2007, I got my PhD, and I thought, and it was about public schools, the reform, and mainly about teacher professional development. After that, I worked in Cambridge University as a researcher for 2 years on a project for creativity. And then I was recruited for the World Bank unit in the ministry. When I arrived at the ministry, everybody used to call me Marie Antoinette. Because, which was horrid, everybody used to call me Marie Antoinette because I came with these, idealistic ideas, and everybody, transforming what I saw and what I experienced in the West. It doesn't work.
You were coming in saying, let them eat creativity.
Yeah, no, let's work on creativity, and they can't even read. Or let's get all the teachers, I don't know, all kinds of crazy ideas. And everybody used to call me Marie Antoinette. And I learned the hard way. I really learned the hard way. I visited over 200 schools, spoke to teachers, principals.
So reflecting now back on it, you think you earned the nickname?
I definitely earned it. I definitely earned it. Now I know. It's very different. Now I understand what works, what doesn't work. There are certain things that I would not even approach at this level. Maybe one day we can work on it, but not now. I can understand. I can feel after 13 years being in this field, I I came to the ministry in 2009, now 2023. So, and this journey that was very painful at times, extremely, very disappointing, yet very rewarding. Now looking back at it, it's very rewarding. So now I understand, there are, as I was saying, I can sense what could work and what couldn't. And I do take risks at times and say, let's try this. And even though I know that it might not work, but actually doing it will help us to learn how we can help it make it work. It's it's not a trial and error, but it's not an area that for wusses, as they would say. You need to be really,
You need to be tough.
You need to be tough. It's very hard, very hard.
Yeah. Do you feel like the impression of the public school system in Lebanon specifically among the broader public is that things are better than they are, or things that are worse than they are? Because I feel the reason why I ask is I feel like there's a global narrative that, the school system in Lebanon is good. We have all these educated people that go out into the world and become part of this very productive diaspora. But maybe I have this is my own blind spot. What do you think the narrative is about the education sector?
Yeah, the education sector at large in Lebanon used to be better, but it's still good. Most importantly, Lebanese people value education. People are ready to work day and night, no matter what social background they come from, in order to ensure that their kids learn or get an education. But I cannot say that the education system is the same as it was before 2019 or even before that. When I was a teacher in the 1900s or 1990, the secondary schools, the public secondary schools were the best in Lebanon. People would send their kids to private schools until the brevet. And then the last 3 years, they would send them to public schools because they have the best teachers. I used to teach in a private school, but all our teachers in the secondary were public school teachers who taught in us. So sadly, with the financial crisis and the devaluation of salaries, some of our best teachers have left the country. Now they're teaching all around in the Arab world. So we've lost a lot of our very, very good teachers, across sector, in the public and in the private sector. The second thing is the teachers who are still teaching, they all have a second job. I was in a school, I was talking to a principal a few weeks ago, and she was saying, we consider our work in the morning as volunteer. We are all here volunteering to teach the kids because we believe the kids need to learn. But in the afternoons, we all have a second job. One is a manicurist, the other one is a bus driver, the third one, I don't know, they do all kinds. She listed all kinds of jobs that they do. So how can a teacher teach in a classroom for 5 hours or 6 hours, then go home to another job? When does she prepare? When does she or he read an article to improve or whatever? So the financial crisis has had a huge impact. So that's the second point. The third point, the public school has been on strike for extended periods, and that has made lots of parents move their children, even though they can't afford it, to private school, because they want their kids to learn. So the situation is not good, but this doesn't mean that we don't have hope. I think we have, as I was saying, education is of great value in Lebanon. We have amazing talent in Lebanon. Amazing talent. The more I work with the public sector, the more I realize that there are really very capable people, but the system is very bad. It doesn't allow good work to move forward.
Very, very tough.
Very tough times. Very tough times.
Let's move on to the quick Q&A. What are you reading or watching these days?
Oh, I'm reading a very interesting book about emotions. Book is saying that we all think that we take rational decisions in life, but there's no such thing as rational decision. Your emotions are the ones that are guiding you to take whatever emotion. It's called emotional. Let's rethink emotions. That's what I'm reading.
Who would you love to shadow for a day, past or present?
I would not necessarily to shadow, but maybe to be a fly on the wall in one of the most, in one of the public schools in some really poor area. No matter how much they talk about their difficulties, I would like to see how does the principal deal with them. And I still feel I don't get it. Although I'm no longer the Marie Antoinette I used to be, but I still feel there's a lot of learning to happen.
What do you think people most misunderstand about your work?
Yeah, people think that we are, we're wasting the money. It's not going in the right place. People think that, شو هالdevelopment هيدا بيجي مصاري nothing happens. Lots of money, but nothing really happens. I wish people would take the time to look at the reports, to look at to look at the situation, the context, to understand we are really working against the tide every day, especially in these past 3 years. We had when we first started Kitabi in April 2019, we had a huge aspirations and lots of hope. And then the situation started to deteriorate. So it's a tough job. I wish people would understand how tough it is and how hard, and would take the time to really see that that how difficult it is.
Yeah. And last question is, whose work do you admire or are inspired by?
I just love the work of Dr. Adnan Al-Amin. I just love his skepticism makes me always keep reflecting and thinking and never to accept anything at face value. I'm inspired by his books and by his work.
If you think about the future of education in the Arab world, you can't read the future, but if you were to imagine what the Arab classroom looks like in 20 years, try to describe it for me.
You walk into the classroom, there's a teacher the classroom is filled with resources. You have math manipulatives on one table or on one shelf. You have books in English or in French. You have books in Arabic, and you have like marionettes or feeling balls or whatever, balloons. A teacher starts the day by greeting her students and gives time for some reflections on the day before or the day to come, giving people time, giving her students and herself time to connect. The teacher works hard on building trust with her students, because once you get your student trust, it's much easier for them to learn and for you to teach. The teacher starts by reading aloud an interesting book, and the students interact. And then she asks them to write a play on to make, to demonstrate what they've learned from the book, each one taking a different character, and they just write down what, the script for a play, and then they demonstrate it or they plan it. After that, the same classroom teacher, the homeroom teacher in grades 1 and 6, asks the students to get out the math manipulatives, and she asks them to start doing some multiplications. They can work in groups, they can work individually, and she walks around and they are doing the work, filling out sheets. After the math, she poses a science question on the board, and she says, now you have laptops around, 4 laptops in your classroom. go and find out information about this topic and try to see what you can find out. Take a few points and let's gather again to see what's the best way to answer this question. And she walks them through her thinking of how to answer the question, the metacognition, and she demonstrates, and then she gives them time to answer the question and, modeling or implementing what she had modeled. At the end of the day, she gives them time for check-in. How do you feel at the end of the day? What was the most important thing you learned today? What would you like to do this evening when you go home? And what would be an ideal week for you this week?
Amazing. I like it.
You like it?
I like it. I'm in.
Yeah, it happens. It can happen.
It can happen.
And of course.
I said that was my last question, but I have one more.
Yeah.
And my question is, on the screen right now is the social media profiles of Kitabi.
Yeah.
And I was reading the line about that sort of one sentence line. It says, Kitabi is an education program designed to improve performance in reading, writing, and math in Lebanon's public primary schools. And I wanted to ask you, between reading, writing, and math, which one needs the most improvement?
Oh, we're very good in math, by the way. We're quite advanced. But this doesn't mean that we don't need work. We're quite advanced. I think the literacy is the most important to me. The writing will come eventually because our motto in Kitabi is that we learn to read to learn. We have to become independent learners. In this day and age, we all have to become independent learners. And the only way a child can become an independent learner if they have very solid literacy skills. So yes, literacy, reading. And then the child will be, they will just need some coaching or some probing and they will learn on themselves.
Yeah. Wafa, thanks so much. This was really, really interesting. If anyone's interested in connecting with you, it's easy to find you online and easier to find Kitabi. Thanks for being a part of the series.
Thank you, Mikey. That was fun. I hope it was useful and entertaining.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Inshallah, we meet again.